Looking good with his hair all done up. There we go. Listen, good morning and welcome. I'll proceed now with the our General Finance Committee meeting of Wednesday, October the 14th, 2020. Call this meeting to order at 9 o'clock. Okay, there is no supplementary agenda today. I want to state that this electronic meeting is being held in accordance with Section 238 of the Municipal Act 2001 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I believe and can confirm here and now that all members are present and we have quorum. There's no one absent. The CAO, the clerk, and other members of the senior team staff are present here. And public input on the agenda was invited at TML public comment at muskokalakes.ca, none of which was received. Motions have been pre-populated with random movers and seconders to expedite the meeting. And members shall physically raise their hand to vote until the chair has confirmed the vote. If the vote is unclear, a verbal vote will be recorded by the clerk. This is not considered a recorded vote. There is no supplementary agenda. So before I proceed with the first delegate, I would like to actually read a prepared statement. I have a written statement here, and I will ask for your attention on this, please. So before we begin today's meeting, I want to toss a few interesting facts at you from a perspective of all departments at Muskoka Lakes. If it seems like we've been busy over the summer, it's because we have. Did you know that in addition to our regular 3 meetings a month since the beginning of July, we've had 16 special committee or council meetings in just the past 3 months. That doesn't even include our advisory committee meetings, all to continue furthering the business of Muskoka Lakes under these trying COVID times. Though you are probably not aware, there's a lot of work that occurs behind the scenes in making all of these meetings happen, and we'd really like to thank Cheryl Mortimer and her team who have ensured all policies and procedures are followed with public transparency at the forefront. In fact, each and every department, every member of the senior leadership team, and every full or part-time staff member have gone above and beyond to accommodate for those extra meetings, this world pandemic, and a new normal for doing business. At the helm of this large organization is, of course, our CAO, Derek Hammond, whose leadership through these unprecedented times is certainly appreciated and respected by each and every staff, our council, and the public. So thanks, Derek. In conversations with the mayor on this topic, we felt publicly acknowledging and thanking each and every staff member was more than appropriate, as we appreciate their efforts as they continue to go above and beyond. At this point, I would ask that as all council is represented here in this committee structure, that you unmute yourselves, join us in a warm round of applause, recognizing the incredible effort put forth by the staff of the town of Muskoka Lakes in keeping COVID-19 off our doorstep. Thank you all. Great, thanks a lot. Okay.
Glenn? Mr. Chair, on behalf of the senior team and staff, I just want to say thank you for the acknowledgement, and it's our pleasure to serve council in the community. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Okay, I'm going to call now item 4A, our first delegation, David Sword from the District of Muskoka, to discuss and present an update on the Muskoka Economic Recovery Task Force broadband update. So David Sword, you're here and we're ready to hear you, sir. Hmm?
So he's in the meeting, but I don't.
Just get David onto the meeting.
So I guess if he's on mute, he needs to take himself off mute, I guess, if he wants to. Continue.
How does he hear us?
You tell him. Oh, there he is.
Oh, David. I guess that's the old proverbial hit the unmute button.
Yeah, Cheryl was trying to.
Oh, there he is. David, can you hear? Are you good to go?
Yes, sir.
I just told everyone how tech savvy you were.
Ah, thank you. I'm in your hands.
Welcome. So we're certainly, council or committee is here and ready to hear what you've got to say as an update on broadband. We're all very interested in this topic, of course.
Okay, well, I'll start just at a little bit about the beginning. The issue of broadband has come up within the district as being a significant issue because of the pandemic and for all of the obvious reasons, more people being at home, wanting to work at home, school children being at home and wanting to access the service. We also did a very comprehensive study on a survey on seasonal residents, and that's going to be coming out shortly. And Corey's been working on that as well as part of the EDO network. It also indicated that what was preventing a lot of seasonal people from spending more time in the district was the lack of broadband. So we know it's a broad issue for everyone in the district. What we have, we got permission from council last meeting to proceed with an RFP. And what the RFP was to determine was what is a gap analysis and also what would be a strategy to help employ to expand broadband. A gap analysis is better determined as a gap study. Basically, it's a roadmap, very similar to a roadmap where roads are as to where broadband is, how fast it is, and how perhaps fast it is not. Where's the 4-lane freeways, the 2-lane paved roads, the gravel roads, maybe the non-gravel roads and the bush trails, and where it's not available. So that's an important feature. We've seen something preliminary right now already, and this is preliminary, but for the most part, with exceptions, if you live within a band of about 3 miles on either side of Highway 11, for the most part, between Huntsville, Bracebridge, and Gravenhurst, you have a good chance of having access to high-speed internet and reliable as well. We'll get into that. For the most part, if you live beyond that band, for the most part, with exceptions, it's usually not so good. We know that already, but what we have to know and learn a bit more about it is exactly where the services are and where they're not. Using that information, we can then determine where the services aren't, what's the best way of getting it to those areas. And one of the best ways actually is maybe going for a request for RFI, request for information from the market to see what's available, what can you provide, and then at what cost. That'll help informed as to what can happen next. So we're starting not where we want to be, but starting where we're at. And where we're at is we need the good baseline data, and that's what the gap study will make available to us. As part of the RFP process, we were also instructed to see if there were any low cost or no cost programs or available information in the public domain. We're pursuing that on a parallel basis, but we want to, we'll begin shortly by looking at that, having gap information in our hands and pursuing it. One thing we're also going to do shortly and more toward the end of this month is something called speed testing. There's a website we'll be able to guide people to, and you can do a speed test in your home or your business, and it will tell you what your broadband speed connection is at that given time. It's a bit, though, many speed tests will be required. It's a bit like driving down Highway 69, 400 to Toronto. How long does that take? You tell me the time of day, and I can give you a good estimation as to how long that will take. It's the very same thing with speed testing as well. What we'd like to do is initiate that and have many people do speed tests at the appropriate times on what they think is low volume and high volume and points in between on that, and encourage public participation. That'll help go to a place that we can access that information. It will tell us more about where the broadband service is adequate and where it is not. And adequate has to be reliable as well. Because you have certain speed at a certain time, you want it to be consistent at all times. So there's the speed and the reliability, and they're intertwined on that as well. And just FYI, we use the word broadband, but high speed, internet, Wi-Fi, it is interchangeable for the most part, but we use the word broadband, and that's connectivity to your home over things over the internet. So what we plan on doing for the next short while, and that'll be more toward the end of the month, and it'll be a robust communication plan, is we'll be encouraging people through district councils and other places in the public to perform a speed test, and that will help inform us about the gaps. And we'll be getting a gap analysis done on that as well, and that'll help inform as to where the service is, and more importantly, where it isn't and needs to be. And based on that, form a strategy as to what can be done to get, these are numbers, and I'm sorry, but it's called the 50-10. That's adequate broadband up to 1 gig, and that's super fast, and all points in between as to what a strategy can be done to help bring that forward. So that's just a general update. If there's any questions, who's working on this? We have a Muskoka Broadband Committee that includes me from the district, all 6 CDOs from the 6 municipalities, including, of course, Corey Moore, and Brenda Rhodes, who represents the chambers, the BIAs, and the business community. So it's a group of 8, mostly public servants and but we have been meeting regularly with any outside third party that wants to, and several have taken us up on that offer on that. So any questions, please? This is a good time to have them discussed, and any feedback would be appreciated as well. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, David. Thank you very much. We have a committee member, Councillor Barb Bridgman, would like to make a statement. Barb?
Thank you, Chair, through you. So David, I know you and I had chatted before. I would like you to also update the committee here on your connection with Parry Sound and what's going on in terms of the Parry Sound Muskoka initiative, if you don't mind.
Thank you. The reeve of the Township of Seguin, Anne McDermott, and the reeve of the archipelago, Bert Leverance, are the chair and vice chair of something they call the Parry Sound Broadband Initiative. They expanded that and wanted to make sure everyone in Muskoka was, one, aware of it, and 2, available to join on it. She had struck a very large committee wanting to inform everyone, and then would have it narrowed down to just the sort of, I guess if I could say, the working level. So the Parry Sound Muskoka Broadband Initiative is an initiative to help create and share information on broadband. Muskoka, in the name, we're a part of it, and I represent Muskoka on that working group. It involves the mayors, there's 2 mayors that I've mentioned, and a few other parties, and some representatives from the Government of Canada. It's meant to be an information exchange and clearinghouse, and share the best practices. And if and when the time comes for something of a broader application throughout the district, because it's a riding as well, that we could join forces together for a common purpose and to stay well connected with each other in terms of what the latest is and learnings from one another. Seguin is a little more ahead of Muskoka in that they have a strategy that they have employed. They've received a gap study, and they're already at the point now where they've led an RFP with Vianet to introduce broadband to areas that don't have services right now. So they're a bit ahead of us. So why are we working separately in Muskoka? Well, we are and we aren't. We're working separately because Muskoka has our own challenges and we need that gap study that others have. So we're doing that separately, but we're still joined closely to make sure that we're learning from one another and sharing our best practices. And if and when the time comes for something of a larger regional network, we're already connected in that regard.
Thank you. That always seemed rehearsed. Way to go. Listen, I wondered if you could speak to the high-speed piece. I'm aware through Bell that they reference high-speed internet as anything above 525. You use the number of 50. So if some people do speed tests at their homes in the woods, they're going to discover that they have very limited internet connectivity, aren't they?
They will. And it's a standard that keeps moving. The CRTC, the Canadian Radio and Television Communication Commission, there's a lot of acronyms, but I think that's what it stands for, has indicated that the 5010 would be the new basis of a minimum standard on that. And it keeps progressing in terms of that. It's a 5010 is a good standard for the proverbial one person in the household doing something high speed, broadband related Netflix, where other people can use it in tandem on that.
Okay. Are you, if I might, just a supplemental, are you working, I haven't heard Bell, Rogers, any of the majors, are you working hand in hand with a group of internet providers, or as suppliers, are you keeping them off to the side and dealing on that overarching piece of what are the needs up here?
We invited anybody who'd like to come and speak and make representation to us to do that. During the time where there was a program offered by the government of Ontario and expansions, we were asked to provide validation letters of support for them. So we received offers of letter of support from Bell, from Cogeco, from Lakeland, and from Xplornet on that. We provided them. We did not get to see their proposals, but we provided them on the basis that for the reader of the Ontario government, Muskoka needed broadband. It was a very important issue. Given that this company appeared that they had a solution for a certain area, it got our endorsement. At that time, we invited them to come and speak with us at any time so we could learn more about their proposal and more about what their plans are, and invited that. On that, we have heard from Lakeland, and they came in to see us, our committee, which Corey Moore would have been part of that as well. And we invited Xplornet. Xplornet said they would get back to us, and we have not heard from the other two, but they'd be greeted with open arms in terms of any time they wanted to come in and visit with us, any of the providers, a standing offer.
Good, thank you very much. Hopefully they heard that. I'm going to ask Councillor Bridgman for her comment there. Barb, has her
A
hand
couple
up?
of follow-ups, thank you, Chair. Mr. Sword, a couple of things. The first is these providers are profit only, so I have real concerns about them going anywhere where they're not going to make money. And so the initiative that's being put forward by the Parry Sound Group, I think is really based on it's an essential service. And somehow we have to be part of this solution where we can dictate what the pricing is to get it to our rural, really rural people. So a couple of things on that. I'd like your comment on the not just the for-profit providers. And also, I know that there was a draft resolution put forward by the Parry Sound Muskoka group that hopefully councils would endorse. And I'd actually like to see the Township of Muskoka Lakes endorse that on top of you working with them so that we're sure we keep all our options open. So I'm hoping that you wouldn't have any issues with that. So I guess that's two separate questions. Thank you.
No, thank you. Please call me David. I work just like everyone on that. And, on that, but thank you, Councillor. I think for the first part, Councillor, is the provision of broadband and how does it get performed in terms of a rural area on that. In circumstances throughout North America, all are trying to do that right now, and all are coming to the realization that some form of subsidies is needed. And what we're looking at and what we hope to discover is, I don't mean to be trite about this, but everything from, you know, a Justin Trudeau, Doug Ford check, here's your money, to the individual paying for it, and all points in between as to what might be available in terms of that. What we've discovered actually is there's some best practices, but what the structure ends up being is what is best for your local area as well in terms of that. But that's going to be part of our discovery in terms of how to get broadband as to what are some of the funding options that can be employed on that. The second part is I'm not as familiar with the resolution you described, but I will make myself more. I think it broadly was that it just underscored the importance of broadband and wanted to make it a community priority. But through the chair and through Corey Moore, I can get more information back to you on that.
Good, thank you. Okay, Councillor or Committee Member Gord Roberts, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is just, this is well needed. It's, I hope we can move the R6 pretty quickly on this, but I know we can't. I like the idea of the really support the idea of our going out and doing speed tests. I'm going to suggest one other thing for you. I worked for Bell Canada and was heavily involved in the initial deployment of services to the homes, and actually moving service order people from our offices into their homes. And of course, speed was an important thing. And I was the manager involved with that. Now, what I think you should do is have another layer or another group involved. And throughout Muskoka Lakes, you should designate specifically individuals who live in areas that are a bit tech savvy and do a pre-trial with them on the speeds. So you'll have a knowledgeable group that really wants to make sure that this happens. And they could all do it at the same time. You could dictate what time, and then you can look at their data. It'll be good to get the public data, but it'll be, you better have a dry run with a bunch of people to make sure that it works the first day. So it doesn't fail. But I think you need that sort of pockets of people throughout of all Muskoka to do their tests so that you can take a look at that controlled group. So that's my comments on it.
Thank you. And it certainly looks like David is taking notes. I love the idea, the notion that you're being receptive, you're listening. This is an opportunity for this township to have a voice. So I appreciate that. I'm going to call on the mayor, Phil Harding, to have a comment.
Thank you for that, Chair Zavitz, and thank you, David, for updating again. And I know we also had this with the Muskoka Economic Recovery Task Force discussion last week, and obviously an issue. I appreciate Councillor Bridgman's perspective, and I agree that we need to sort of push some things forward. The one area, and I'm going to request committee, we don't have a resolution in committee, but if we can take it directly to council, I think would be appropriate. The one area and one of the cost prohibitions for high-speed internet is that of Hydro One, and the cost of co-locating or locating cable or fiber cable on hydro towers or even Bell Canada towers, and which means people like Lakeland or Cogeco end up having to bury cable, and that becomes cost prohibitive. The rental fees of the towers are extremely high, but knowing that the province owns Hydro One, I think it would be appropriate for us to start a motion specifically that the province eliminate the cost of removing Hydro One fees for co-locating and putting internet infrastructure on their towers. The rental's just exorbitant. So maybe if committee, and through you, Mr. Chair, is appropriate, that we could bring back an appropriate resolution directly to council in this regard next month to start this ball rolling.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I might look to the CAO for a nodding of his head. That's great. Thank you. So we'll certainly follow up on that, Mayor. Good suggestion. Great suggestion. And I'm going to ask Councilor Mazan for her comment.
Thank you. And through you, I think this is actually more a question versus a comment, and I'm not sure exactly who to direct it to, but I believe Councillor Bridgman brought up the term essential service. And I think any of us who have lived through the last 6 to 7 months up north, whether it be trying to conduct business, do Zoom calls for such, raise children, trying to go to school, you really quickly realize the privilege of having good broadband is. So certainly supportive, and thanking you, David, for doing this. I guess the question I have is essential service. By deeming this an essential service, what does that afford us? And I'm not sure if it was Barb who brought that up, or David, if it was you, but just some clarity on that actual definition and declaration.
I'll just speak as a layperson, because I'm not sure what teeth that would have in terms of from a policy perspective, but designated, it elevates, I would suggest it elevates it to that status of what a road, a water and sewer and
Okay.
basic drinking water is. And it indicates that the township or local area deems it on par with those kinds of initiatives or basic elements of public utility.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Barb, did you?
Sorry?
Sorry, I was just going to ask Barb if she wanted to add to that.
Through you, Chair. No, I think that David has captured that. It would be an essential service that everybody is entitled to. And I think our governments have to ensure that that happens, however that structure looks. But we have to guarantee that everybody gets this, or we're going to leave so many people behind. They won't be able to cope in the world in 20 years' time. I'm thinking of students who don't have access to at all. So that's just my further comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perhaps we could, inject that language into all of our communications, whether it comes to council next month, and start using the reference to essential service time and time again, over and over again, and reinforce that point. Councillor or Committee Member Jaglitz has a comment.
Sorry, can I just have a quick supplemental then? I just wanted to concur with that, Chair Zavitz, that I think that language needs to be at the forefront. And as somebody who did have to go through the last 6 months with kids on Wi-Fi, it is a complete differentiator. And I think that that kind of language is important. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Councillor Jaglitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a question for David. I noticed recently that the mayors of northern municipalities are starting to look at SpaceX's Starlink offering that's coming to our area. And I just wondered if I didn't hear that mentioned in anything that you mentioned or Perry Sound. Is that option being looked at?
It is, and it's an option. I think it could be viable. It looks a bit as an idea right now that's being tested out, but all those type of things, it's that type of thinking actually that's going to be a solution on that. One area that we looked at that has topography on it, there's many mountainous areas that have topography, and we have rolling hills with rock. And that makes it nice on one side of that hill and not so nice on the other. So those options are, we're aware of that, and we've had a look at it as well.
So supplementary, I think it deserves a really good look. And I'll use the example of third world countries where maybe I'm talking about telephone now. In this country, we have telephone wires all over the place. Third world countries came into the game late, and they use all cellular type of approach. They don't have wires. We're talking now, we think high-speed internet is fiber optics. Maybe we need to expand our horizon. And I think that the SpaceX Starlink is fiber optic in the sky. And so I think it shouldn't just be a cursory look, it should be a big piece. That's my view anyway.
Sure. It has some hurdles before it becomes live, and that is to do with licensing and the CRTC and its application. But I didn't mean to be trite about that. It's certainly worth a very serious look. What I meant is it may be a bit of a ways until it becomes live within Canada on that, but it's certainly a solution that warrants the look as you described.
But I would suggest we also, if we're going to be talking to our provincial counterparts about regulation, we should be telling them that they should grant a license to them. It would appear to me that what's happening is the providers that are using fiber optics here are trying to slow them down in Canada so they can get a better foothold. And I think we should have all options available to us. And I just can't vision fiber optic ever running to my cottage. I'm sorry. So.
Right.
Agreed.
Okay, good discussions and very, very necessary. I guess just to put an exclamation mark or point on this, I know with Bell, you get 350 gig. No one's even talked about the capability that is delivered to you when you pay $79 a month and you get 350 gig, which is almost unlimited, if you will. And when I switched over to Bell a few months ago, and then, my bubble came up and worked out of our place for 5 to 6 days, we exceeded the 350 gig, and that's a heyday for them. The next 70 gig was $135. So, and I know it, I understand it, but so how does it go from $79 for 350 gig to, $100 to almost $200 for another 70? So I haven't heard that, David. That's clearly part of your suitcase, if you will, to unpack, is the cost benefit of, say 525 high speed and the pricing piece to that. Or is that going to be down the road? Pricing comes after?
That's a really good point in terms of the pricing point. It's not lost that countries like Australia, which have a large expanse of geography, pay a lower rate than we do. We're aware of that. But I think in terms of the sequence that we're following right now, that's worthy of keeping in mind, but it's a little later on down the road.
Okay, good. Thank you. Listen, I just want to shop this notion, as per the mayor, to bring a motion right to council next month. Do I have a general feeling of in favor of? I'm seeing some heads nodding. Are we good with that? Is that something that everybody would be interested in? Good. So I'm saying, obviously, a majority of the heads saying yes. So let's proceed with that. With that, I suppose there's no other comments. David, I want to thank you for a very interesting discussion, and it prompts just an incredible amount of thought. So thank you for that. I'm sure we'll see you again.
Thank you very much. And just one point for the consideration, Chair. We know that other municipalities in Muskoka are wanting that. Perhaps Corey and I could take it upon ourselves to offer a draft resolution so that it contains the information that we think is core with any additional that is provided later.
Good, thank you. And I'm sure we'll take you up on that offer. And again, through Corey, we could accommodate that for next month at council. I see Councillor Jaglowitz. Before I close this off and say goodbye to David, I'd allow a supplemental. Frank, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I was just wanted to address the motion that was going to come forward next month. I wonder if you could also ask staff to look into the issue I raised with the licensing of Starlink, and as to whether or not that should be included also in that motion. That we support the northern mayors who are requesting the provincial or the appropriate governments to issue those licenses.
Yeah. So I don't know if it would be that far-reaching yet. Perhaps the council can, chime in here. At council, one supposes, but do we go right to this? That's the supply piece, right? I mean, that is as part of the basket, if you will. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, is this not a more overarching motion? We would be talking almost specifically about Hydro One, or is this a more general motion? Perhaps I could ask. I don't know, the mayor. Phil, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, thank you. I don't think we want to preclude something like SpaceX, obviously, but it's very specific to one individual company at this particular point, and not understanding the full ramifications. I think, for us to say we want that may be difficult. We have identified through a number of broadband initiatives that the cost of burying cable is a barrier. So asking Hydro One to help with that and having the province to help with that, I think is appropriate. I think between Corey and David that we can put some other language in there to help us this whole entire process move forward. And maybe it's capped on fixed rates type of thing, that when you hit certain data levels. I do know, and because I've been in numerous conversations with Rogers in particular, the cell towers of which we access, as I'm sitting in my truck right now, I have a download speed of 170 megs. That's crazy fast. The problem is these cell towers are not built to handle the amount of data that gets chewed up in Zoom meetings and everything else. They were built for cellular communication. And though they can handle it, it's a small amount of data that comes down relative. And if you turned on 3 people, you would crash the networks. That's the big fundamental problem, that they were not built for that. So the upgrades to that is what all the province and all the suppliers are looking at as another alternative, to Councillor Jagowitz's perspective, to go wireless versus having to go fiber optic cables. And sometimes it's fiber to those towers to allow us a wireless. So I think the resolution should look at all solutions and not preclude anybody from that. So I support that. I'm just not sure I would support 100% granting a license to a particular operation right now. I think there's smarter minds that would understand that than mine.
Okay, good, thank you. And I think that kind of shapes it up, frames it up for us all. So with that, we'll take that under advisement. Thank you again, David, and we look forward to you working with Corey more and continue on this discussion. So thank you and have a great day.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Okay, committee. Item 4B on our agenda today, General Finance Committee agenda. I'm going to welcome here and now. I see he's here. Good morning, Jason Grossman, Senior Manager of Public Affairs for the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs, which is the CIJA. And he has a request for our adoption of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's working definition of anti-Semitism, which is item 6A in the report. After Jason speaks, I'm going to read, we would go right to item 6A and look at that resolution here and now. So anyway, Jason, you've got the floor. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Good morning, Your Worship and members of the committee. Thank you for having me and welcoming me this morning. My name is Jason Grossman, and I'm a local seasonal resident in the Township of Muskoka Lakes, and I'm so happy to join you here today. I'm here on behalf of the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs, the advocacy agent of Jewish Federations of Canada. All around the world, we're seeing a rise in anti-Semitism. Conspiracy theories we hoped were lost to a different time have resurfaced, often with a new facade and sometimes with deadly consequences. We are fortunate to call Canada home, perhaps the greatest country in the world to live as a minority. But even here, we are not immune. According to Statistics Canada data, an anti-Semitic hate crime takes place on average once every 24 hours somewhere in Canada. A 2018 Environics Institute research study revealed that close to 4 in 10 Jewish Canadians reported downplaying their Jewish identity in public, with young Jewish Canadians twice as likely to have experienced discrimination because of their Jewish identity. The Jewish people are resilient, but there are considerable fear about what will happen if rising anti-Semitism is left unchecked. Smaller communities, like the vibrant community here in Muskoka Lakes, home to many Jewish seasonal residents, rely on more support and friendship of non-Jewish neighbors, but are in many ways more exposed to anti-Semitism. But history shows us that if anti-Semitism is left unchecked, it does make for a dangerous situation for Jews, and it also erodes the fabric of society as a whole, for both Jews and non-Jews alike. The first step towards effectively addressing anti-Semitism in our midst is to ensure that we can effectively identify it when it rears its ugly head. It's a toxic virus that has mutated over centuries, and it's important that we recognize it in its contemporary forms. This will ensure a shared understanding to empower us to work together towards a better future for all. The IHRA, or the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, was established in 1998. And the definition was a product of a deliberate process involving experts in the field of anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial. The definition was adopted in 2016 by consensus. 34 countries, including Canada, have endorsed the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition, as well as the European Parliament and the United Nations. Our federal government has made it a cornerstone of its national anti-racism strategy, and there's currently a bill before the provincial legislature, which has passed second reading with support from both the government and the official opposition. The working definition, with its illustrative examples, addresses a range of contemporary activities and rhetoric that amount to anti-Semitism. This includes making demonizing, dehumanizing, and stereotypical allegations about Jews, holding Jews collectively responsible for the wrongdoings of a single Jewish person, and denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination, and denying the scope or fact of the Holocaust. It is written as a helpful guide to assist in considering whether something is or is not anti-Semitic, providing some clear context and contingent parameters to frame the inquiry. I commend you all for your leadership in bringing this important motion forward today. It means a lot to our community to see people even outside of our Jewish community in Toronto standing up and doing the right thing in this time of uncertainty. If any councillors have any questions, I would be happy to take them. Thank you very much.
I think we're just waiting for the chair. I'm not sure if he's on Zoom, so just hold on a second.
No problem.
Thank you. And I will tell you, as thank you for the letter to council and myself in particular, and certainly happy to move this forward. It's amazing what we don't see and what we don't feel. So certainly happy to support this.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I think the chair was just making his point that we have an internet problem in Muskoka.
We can't hear you, Chair.
You have your, there you go.
Okay, sorry. So we didn't hear the mayor's comments. You know, I don't know if you'd like to repeat them, if that's relevant or not. We certainly have a resolution here. I don't see any other commentary other than an obvious sensitivity to this piece. So, you know, I'm going to see Councillor Roberts. Gord?
Thank you, Chair. And yes, thank you for bringing this to our attention at council. Just struggling with my words. We as a country and as a world have evidence every year, every day, almost every hour of racism. This past week, we've had in the news, we've had Muslim concerns. We've had East Asian racial concerns. We've had it's going beyond the religious realm, where we have the indigenous and Black concerns with racism. And I'm supportive of this, but I think this council, if we support this, we must come out with another or a stronger support of doing against anti-racism, anything that puts down any group. And so that's what I would like to propose maybe as a supplemental agenda item for next month, that we must not only support the Jewish group, but also all of the unique groups or within Canada. So that's what I'd like to see. Thank you.
Good, thank you. And we did discuss this during the agenda planning piece. Everything you said, absolutely. And, you know, we need to go, we can go further. And, but we'll deal with that, I think, in a separate piece. And certainly we take that under advisement. Committee member Roberts, take that under advisement today. Councilor Nishikawa has a comment.
Thank you. Mostly I wanted to comment, well, it's always interesting. This topic is very interesting in my household because, you know, we deal with it every day. And it's horrible, I will tell you all. But I will also say that I think that district is on a certain track, and I think we could certainly be part of that track. And interestingly enough, hopefully we can learn from what they're doing in trying, instead of trying to reinvent something. I watched what a couple of other local councils did, and it actually ended up insulting some groups. So I think you have to be very careful and understand that there's a lot to it. It's not that I'm not supporting this particular initiative right now, and I think certainly we should move this forward, but there are bigger groups that doing it, and our little part, I don't think, I think the amount of work that's needed, I don't believe that our current setup is going to give any weight to any of that.
Okay, good. Thank you. I see no other comments, and certainly how could one disagree with all this experiential observation? One can't. I would like to read this resolution, and I see no hands, so I think I'll just simply go ahead. Moved by Councillor Edwards and seconded by Councillor Hayes. Be it resolved that the General Finance Committee recommended Township Council that the Township of Muskoka Lakes adopt the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliances, IHRA, working definition of anti-Semitism and illustrative examples as adopted at the IHRA plenary on May 26, 2016. All those in favor? Okay, so we got them all? So it's unanimous? Good, very, very good. That's carried, that's unanimous. Jason, thank you very much for bringing this this notion forward, and thank you for being a member of the Township of Muskoka Lakes.
Thank you so much.
Have a good
I
day.
appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, cheers. Okay, item 5A. It's 10 to 10. Are we good to press on? This will be a fairly large and heavy file. Item 5A, I'm going to call on Director of Public Works Ken Becking to discuss and present to us the draft Parks Use Bylaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members of council. The existing parks bylaw, such as they are, consist of two bylaws. Bylaw 79-103, which regulates camping on township lands, and bylaw 84. Sorry, I forgot the number. In any event, the bylaw that designates certain parklands as parks. There have been, over the years, a history of problems, and the former council set it as a strategic initiative to update the parks bylaw, and staff are certainly just carrying forward with that direction. We have compiled a draft bylaw for your consideration. We have set out the designation of parks, which also includes trails. It has been drawn to staff's attention that there are two playgrounds that are not included, and it's recommended that the bylaw be updated before council passage to include the Milford Bay Community Center Playground and the Walker's Point Community Center Playground. Hours of operation, we're recommending that the hours be from 7 in the morning until 11 p.m. at night, and by doing so and prohibiting activities after those times, or before or after those times, then that will prohibit camping within the park. In section 7 of the draft bylaw, we have regulated the activities that can occur in the parks and to areas designated for those uses, so as to avoid unnecessary damage to our facilities. So the best example of I can give you is sometimes we will have individuals who want to swing their golf clubs in the middle of a soccer pitch, as an example. We want to avoid those sorts of situations so that we don't have conflicting uses trying to avail themselves of the same chunk of real estate. Section 9 allows for the issuing of permits for special uses of our parks and facilities. So this would enable things like festivals and like to take place within our facilities, but also gives us the ability to regulate what uses are permissible, and requires insurance coverage with indemnification so that we're covered from a liability perspective. Section 10 prohibits encroachments, so people making use of our parkland for private purposes. Asset protection in section 11 prohibits damage to property. Section 12, skating, essentially is intended to ensure that one activity does not prevent or interfere with others' enjoyment of the same facilities. Swimming, we do have a number of beaches, as council is aware. This gives us the authority to give direction about the safe use of them and to avoid the possibility of articles being left or thrown away at our swimming locations that would cause or harm or injure other users. The other significant section is section 16, temporary closure. It gives staff the authority to close a portion of a park or all of a park should there be some concern with its condition, or in the alternative to subject to council's permission, close the park for special events and so forth. The bylaw in draft form was sent to the Parks and Recreation or Parks and Trails Committee for their consideration. The only comment that we received back from them was with respect to the hours of operation, and the version that's in front of you reflects their input. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Good, thank you. Great report. I must say that I found your notable highlights section very relevant and helped me sort of bullet point, get right into it. I might also, I guess, two things. Framing this as this is essentially, perhaps a strange way to put it, but this is the township's non-COVID overall updating of existing bylaw, so that there will be some, I'm certain as we unfold, as we related to the COVID response this winter to inviting people out, the economic development piece to this, that there will be some exceptions. Am I correct? There will be some sort of an exception piece to when we put this into law, if you will?
Exceptions in what respect, Mr. Chairman?
Well, just I don't know, just in terms of creating a plowed walking area where in a traditional winter we might not. I don't know. Is that and again, some of the notions that we've been discussing around this table and I've heard for the last few months, and which we'll be looking at, I would think, very quickly as that season is approaching. A trail, cross-country skiing. And anyway, am I not right? Or is there, I guess I would call it an exception. Maybe we don't.
I wouldn't see anything in the bylaws being contrary to that sort of direction, Mr. Chairman. The clear intention is that use of these facilities during the winter months is permissible, except in those periods when to do so would cause damage to the facility.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you for that clarity. And again, I want to also state, I believe that what I did hear from you is that so the Parks and Trails Advisory Committee has essentially approved or at least embraced the notion. They provided some input. It was accepted into this report and into the bylaw sensitivity. Am I correct on that?
Yes, you are.
Okay, good. Thank you. I'll ask Councilor Mazan has a comment.
Thank you, and through you. Actually, the questions or comments you just made me relook at the list of facilities. And I'm just wondering, the designated park, is the Milford Bay Golf Course something that should be on that list of designated parks?
I would say yes, Mr. Chairman. That's an oversight. Recognizing, however, that is further subject to a use agreement. But I don't see that the two are in conflict with one another.
Thanks.
Good, thank you. Councilor Hayes.
Okay, thank you. And through you, I have a question first before I proceed. The areas at Milford Bay and Walker's Point, there's large areas there that are used for outdoor recreation. Will those be included in this park's definition?
Director?
Mr. Chairman, that is the intention, yes.
Okay, I have a couple of comments. Under the definition of smoke and smoking, perhaps we should mention vaping as well, and that's in the definitions. I think parks, trails, and facilities may want to be separated. The reason being in section 5.5, you're suggesting that the hours on our trails should be until 11 p.m. Trails should be set to be closed a half an hour after sunset. There's no reason for people to be out on the trails in the dark. If there is, chances are they're going to need rescuing, and by telling them it's safe to be out there, we may be incurring the costs of that rescue rather than them. Clarification, is the Torrance Ball Diamond a designated dog run? Because we do see dogs out there in the fence quite often, and according to what you've said in the parks, they're not supposed to be off leash. So I just needed clarification on that. 7.8 about footwear on tennis courts. It says tennis courts in our parks. Both our tennis courts are in our community centers. So we may want to change the wording on that. 7.9, 7.10, and 7.11. It says they have to have a permit. When we run an event, we don't have a permit, we just have permission. So could those three be changed to a permit or during a sanctioned event? Advertising devices in 9C. At the Walker's Point Community Center, we have 3 bulletin boards. 1 and 2 are used for information, 3 is used for advertising. And that advertising, since the last 40 years, has paid for our children's Christmas party. And I'm just wondering how that is going to affect, can we somehow be exempt from that? And also 9K, public address system, could that, could we have a public address system at a sanctioned event? 11.5, licensed animals. We should have an ability for people who are responding to any animal calls, like the wildlife sanctuary or trappers that are needed in our parks, be exempt from that. 9/11, does that, will that also prohibit people from parking at a park, lifting their kayak onto their shoulders and walking it to the shore? There's absolutely no damage. You do see them quite often in the areas. Could we address that so that they are not covered in, because it says anyone transporting, and that is covered by walking. Could we also add that no person shall park a vehicle on any park, trail, or community center area except for the designated parking areas, and that there be no overnight parking at our trails or our parks? Number 15, I think is, there's a comma missing in between smoke and vape. And Schedule 1 should add Smith's Beach. And that's it.
Wow.
Sorry.
You clearly weren't watching The Bachelorette last night. Very good and very fulsome. You know, you went through that very well. I'm wondering, Director Becking, I don't know, you know, instead of going down that list, I'm wondering if, what do we do here? I mean, I do have a resolution, which is to bring this this to council next month, but we have to vote on, I guess what we're voting on. I don't know that we want to go into wholesale changes. I mean, we could, or do we just defer this one month and have it come back here, approve that with changes, and of course comment around those changes, or else we would just submit it, I guess, put it out here now and people could comment on each one. So, you know, there's a ways to go on this, it would seem. Maybe Director Becking, might you have a comment on that?
There's a variety of approaches that could be brought to bear. If committee would feel more comfortable, what I would suggest is, I've tried to scratch down as many of the comments as Councillor Hayes has given. I can easily bring this back to committee for another review next month. In the meantime, that will give me an opportunity to chat, have a sidebar chat with Councillor Hayes or any other member of council for that matter, and take that feedback and bring it back to you at a later date. There are some things that the Councillor Hayes has raised that are good points. There are other things that I believe are covered off already, and I'm not sure that I think by being more specific, in fact, we're taking away generality, which would allow us to act in a broader scope. So it's whatever the committee is comfortable with, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. And I haven't heard from you in regards to, would this actually go back? Councillor Hayes, you're not on the Parks and Trails committee, are you? No, I don't think you are. So point being is that I'm wondering, should this be a discussion piece to go back to Parks and Trails, which then for their monthly meeting, flesh this out and then come back to here next month? Sorry, CAO has a comment.
Councillor Hayes wanted to-
Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Hayes, supplemental?
Yes, the changes that we're talking about are very small tweaks. On a whole, this is a very good bylaw and it should go forward. I don't think that it should be held back. I think that if there's any changes that we can make better between now and then, we should go ahead and present it at council next month. And I'm willing to just send my list to Ken. What does go in, great. What doesn't, that's okay too. But all in all, I would like to see this go forward.
Good, fine. And as we all would, there's a number of people with their hands up, Councilor Nishikawa, Councilor Roberts, Councilor Edwards. I'm going to ask though, I'm going to let the CAO chime in here, maybe from a procedural piece. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Further to Councillor Hayes' point, if committee wished to provide their comments to Mr. Becking, he could provide an amended copy moving forward to council. The resolution today could be amended to identify as amended, which I think sort of captures the spirit of what Councillor Hayes was suggesting. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Councilor Nishikawa. Go ahead.
Thank you. I would have, the direction seemed to be that we would be deferring this a month before we were going to be bringing it back to council. And if the decision is to not do that, but to vote on what we have today, I would not be voting on it. I am one that likes to take this information and discuss it with the public. I know there are some things in this bylaw, while they seem very minor, don't fit into how I've watched the public use our facilities over the years. And they are not being abusive or anything like that. And my concern is that, and everything in the reading, it actually really just concerns me that we are taking the human element out of things and the actual users. And I didn't hear an answer about the dog park, but I, as a community member that participated in building the Torrance Ball Diamond, and again, let's remember that all of our parks, including the Torrance Ball Diamond, Sunset Park, all of those things, they were built by volunteers. So I'm very aware that I should be consulting with those people. This did not allow me to do that. So if it's deferred another month, that would be great. I think it actually should go back to committee because I'm not clear that some of our other issues may have been addressed. Sorry to take your time up.
Go back. Okay, no, thank you, Councilor Nishikawa. Others, I wouldn't mind hearing. Councilor Edwards, you had your hand up earlier. Is that okay? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it being actually deferred a month, but there's a few things in, like sports field, baseball should be in there. I'd like the Windermere Community Center in. I think the Village Park is already in. Also, we have a park up at Rosso Falls that should be included in that. And also some of the docks, because people do swim off some of those docks. And I've had more complaints this summer about dogs running free.
If they decide to defer. Good, thank you. Any others? Anyone else?
The mayor.
Oh, okay, so I'll let Councilor Roberts and then the mayor has a comment after.
First of all, I want to compliment Director Becking on this excellent document he has put forward. If you look at the 1984 version, we go quite a ways, and we haven't done much in many, many years. Dr. Becking did have at this, brought a good doc. No, Ruth, what's wrong? Anyways, but I am supportive of holding off and making sure that we get everyone's comments And so this is the first time we've done it since '84. Let's make sure the next version lasts for 30 years. Okay, those are my comments. So I think we should defer.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, and thanks to everyone, and thanks to Director Becking as well. Certainly a significant change since 1984, and there's no question our parks are being used different. Parking in and around our parks is being used different. I'm sure every councillor was aware of some of the parking issues that went on this past weekend. You know, thankfully people were using the facilities of which we had. You know, I guess my one comment is the concept between committee structure and presenting it, and then 30 days later is that's the opportunity for tweaks and changes. You know, we're not approving this fully today. We have another 30-day pause for the public to see this and circulate and understand. You know, we don't have to hit the perfect finish line today, but I'm at, you know, if I'm getting a sense from committee in this particular case, my perspective is that they want to delay 30 days. So I guess I'd only ask the question to Director Becking. Is there anything in here that you feel was in jeopardy if this was to wait 30 days? Because it becomes a 30-day pause, but 60 days, so this would be ratified.
Mr. Chairman, to the mayor's point, I don't think anything turns on this being approved at the next session of council. Quite frankly, I recognize that this is a rather far-reaching bylaw, and I would recommend that we take a thoughtful approach rather than to try and ram it through. So, you know, I'll do as committee directs, but I would advise thoughtfulness as opposed to rapidity.
Yeah, good. Thank you. I just saw a thumbs up from the mayor. Listen, I wonder, committee, can I sort of get a sense from you, take your temperature on this one? My sense is that we would likely defer this for 30 days and have it come back to general finance in a derivative of same, given that there isn't a time constraint. Do I have some sort of agreement from people on that? I'm seeing. Okay, good, we do. So great, thank you. Yeah, certainly. So I guess what we would have you do, given that we'll defer this now, is if everyone could, if you have comments, please share them with with our Director of Public Works, Ken Becking, and we'll fashion that second way forward a month from now at General Finance. Okay. Good. Excellent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Sorry?
That's what disclosures of interest. We missed, I think, asking that at the beginning.
Disclosures of interest. I didn't ask that. So maybe just to cover off that detail, if you don't mind, committee, I did not earlier ask if there were any disclosures of interest. Strange time to ask it, but there we go. Done. Thank you. I'm seeing a shaking of heads. Okay, we're gonna move on. It's 10:20, so perhaps around 10:30 we could take a short pause. Corporate services. I'm going to ask our corporate administrator to speak on the support of the town of Amherstburg Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act website compliance.
We have to go back to the discussion of the Milford Bay.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was snuck in there. Item 5B, committee. Item 5B is a discussion about the street parking in Milford Bay near Huckleberry Rock. How could I forget that? So that's a general discussion. Councillor Mazan, apparently you'd like the floor.
Thank you, and through you, I'll try to keep this brief and concise. I don't think anybody sitting or listening on Zoom call today would be surprised to know that Huckleberry has been well promoted and well used and well loved which is wonderful in many regards, but it does warrant us having a look at parking and parking not only on the rock, which we don't want, but parking on the street. And just a simple request to ask staff to come back to us next month with a report and hopefully some recommendations as to how to help manage the increased street parking that we are seeing along Milford Bay Road outside of Huckleberry Rock.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Roberts has his hand up.
Yes, thank you. Just with that staff report, I would add that to look for unique ways of doing that. I think I know in Milford Bay the issue is during the fall months. So I don't know whether this could be a seasonal solution rather than a year-round solution, because in the wintertime, Milford Bay goes back to its quiet little hamlet. It may be different this year with everyone staying in Muskoka, but that's what I'd like you to consider. Thank you.
Good. Councillor Nishikawa, go ahead. Ruth, are you muted?
I am unmuted. I don't know. Somebody muted me, so that's why. Can you hear me
There you
now?
go. There you go. We can hear you now. Thank you.
I just want to remind folks, or where, from a development perspective, when Huckleberry and even many of our parks were developed, we recognize the size of the facility. For instance, a 3-kilometer trail, and how many people can actually be on the trail. This is pre-COVID, of course. And the reality is that when the parking lots are full, essentially the trail is full. It's enough. We haven't grown any more land or facilities. For instance, what's going on in Hardy Lake Park, there's no social distancing. There's nothing going on other than trampling down, because again, our paths, our trails, generally they are 3 or 4 feet wide. In most cases. And I just think that we're being asked to create something that we don't have the ability to do. And I don't think that we should be we should be looking for new facilities, but the ones that we have are built out to what they can take. And also noting that we have not seen maintenance. Primarily the volunteers historically have been great for the maintenance of our trails. We've had to eliminate some of that over the years, but I just want council to recognize that these are facilities that are very small. They, again, we're talking about sometimes it's less than an hour that you might be on a hike and things. So I hope that we're not going to be moving forward by trying to create larger and more parking areas to in fact bring more people where there's more people can't be had, I guess is the best way to put it. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Others, any other comments on that? I guess we're going to take this under advisement. Certainly, I guess the comment might be that there is more than, as we all know, more than just Huckleberry Rock. Councillor Nishikawa commenting on Hardy Lake, and of course, I've heard the notion that we would increase the size of that parking lot, et cetera. So there's a lot of issues. I'm not sure how we deal with this other than as a very separate and succinct issue. And I don't know, is there an appetite? I mean, is this something we could look at when this issue comes back to General Finance next month in terms of the deferment on the report for the bylaw? Is that fair that we could ask for a report in 30 days on that related issue? I'm getting people going crazy. So Robert's here.
No.
Thank you, Chair. The Parks Committee have been working or starting, we'll have in the budget for next year, a park strategic plan and a park report to say where we want to be when we grow up, how we want to handle the new environment. So you got to leave it with the Parks and Trails Committee, which is set up to do this type of thing. And I think the only thing we're talking, well, I agree with the chair that we possibly need to, and Councillor Nishikawa has brought it up a number of times, we need as a group to decide how we're going to handle this influx of popularity that we really want to be able to accommodate, but we need to do it safely. So that's a totally separate thing. And then what's on the table today is the parking along Huckleberry Rock, which will quiet down significantly given that Thanksgiving is over. So that's those what I have to say.
Thank you. And Mayor Harding?
Thank you. I think that was the point Councillor Roberts just made, that, you know, our parking issues for the most part as fall season, we get into winter season, is not going to be as pressing a demand. And I think through our parks and trails, we need to understand what we really need. And, you know, we need to also understand as soon as you eliminate parking, we may cause more problems because people are going to park in somebody's driveway and they're going to get off the road. You know, unless we decide to put some gatekeepers there taking numbers saying there's 42 people in the trail right now or maxed out at 100 people. It's kind of difficult. You know, I do know for the first time ever this past summer or fall, Algonquin Park had to close the doors to the day trippers. We've never had to do that. They've never had to do that, to my understanding. So I think it's just a change in the environment, especially under COVID times. Let's hope by next summer we're back to a little bit more normal. There are some people will be doing some indoor activities and outdoor activities. But I think parking can come back in the next few months on all of our parks and trails with some better understanding of our Parks and Trails Committee.
Good, thank you. And certainly to Councillor Roberts' point, if Parks and Trails is where it is, it's in a good spot. So maybe I'm good for that. I'm going to ask Councillor Mazan and then Councillor Nishikawa for some comments to wrap it up.
Thank you, and through you, yes, just with the intention of moving forward. The request at the beginning was a discussion around parking at Huckleberry Rock. What my specific request was to allow staff to go away and come back with the recommendations. As the folks who have the whole picture and understanding the nuances to this particular location. And there's some new things that are evolving. Just back in March, we actually ended up as a council paving because there was parking during the winter months issues in that exact area as well. So I think if I could just ask that we allow staff to come back with their thoughts and recommendations to this particular location. That does not preclude, in my mind, the better and the bigger, more fulsome work that the Parks and Trails Committee is doing for the entire township. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Nishikawa, then Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. Actually, Susan, I would have supported a resolution today to have no parking on one side of the street. And I say that is because that would be a really simple. I don't believe that that people are gonna go away. Have you seen Hardy Lake Park today? Wednesday. People aren't going away, and I think that we will still have these issues. We're gonna have these issues in the wintertime. I think that it could be something simple as only disallowing parking on one side of the road. And I would hope that that doesn't have to take 2 months to happen. And that's my concern. I would have liked to have moved something forward today to deal with that issue because it is a real issue today. And I don't believe that issue is going to go away in the next 2 months. I think it needs to be dealt with as soon as possible.
Is that the, well, so what we're saying is we don't want to leave it up to Parks and Trails to do their good work. And from what I'm hearing, they would, it's your committee, you would be coming back with some more fulsome, as opposed to right now. This seems, there's an urgency piece to this. So could
I clarify, Councillor Zavitz?
Oh, yeah.
Just for a moment. I feel like the request that, at least the discussion that I was bringing forward, or the request I was bringing forward, there is a real need within the Milford Bay community. Huckleberry is a beautiful space. There's lots of people coming. It's a wonderful thing, but it has brought forward a parking issue. You know, in discussion with the other ward beat councillors and with staff, we are asking for staff to come back with this specific ask, not parks and trails as a whole, but to help us understand what is the best way for us to manage street parking in Milford Bay, in and around the Huckleberry Rock location. There are a whole host of other things that we can be talking about that are important around parks and trails. But my specific ask in this one is, could staff come back with a recommendation that we could implement fairly quickly? Because we do see the need. It's not a matter of pushing this off. This is actually coming back and from what I understand, the appropriate process to allow for the right solution. Thank you.
Okay, good. So Councilor Nishikawa has another comment, and then I'll let Director Becking. Oh, sorry, Councilor Edwards as well. Sorry.
Well, I wanted to basically add, much along the line of what Susan said, is that I don't believe that this particular issue is a Trails Committee issue. It is an issue that is dealing with our road, our in Milford Bay. That's what we're dealing with. It is the result of a park, but we're dealing with a parking issue that is a concern in Milford Bay. And that's how I wanted to look at it. You can send it back to committee, but really, I think that we're not going to get anything more on the table than what's already been presented. And I would just like to see something move forward sooner than what's been recommended.
Okay, fair enough. Just for clarity, you see Huckleberry Rock as well as Highway 169. I see you're bringing something forward at some later point. Do you see those two linked and related? I mean, it's now we're talking about parking on roads. Some are district roads, some are our own roads.
It's anywhere that we have a challenge, with parking, where people are creating issues with for other drivers, for pedestrians. That doesn't necessarily fall under Trails Committee.
Okay, so it's anywhere in the township where there's that type of activity is what I'm hearing. I'm going to let Councillor Edwards finally speak.
Thank you very much, Chair. And that's just a couple of issues. I think it is a parking issue only on that road, and we should do something about it because we do have fire emergency vehicles that may have to use that road. And if there's parking on both sides, you won't get a fire truck down there. That's one thing. Secondly, I'd like to know with all our parks and trails what the parking is, because I think Hardy Lake is a very small parking area, and that is a large area. It's not so much a trail because it's a large rock and people can social distance on a park like that. I think that it's something that should be looked at, and I think that it's something that we should be looking at all our parking lots and see just what the maximum is. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to thank you. I'm going to defer to Director Becking for the Public Works parking piece here. You're muted, Ken.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would suggest that fundamentally this is first and foremost an issue of parking on roadways. While the parking may be caused by a park or trail, the reality is that it is a function of the road.
Motion.
And so to that end, I would suggest that council or committee rather give direction that staff prepare a report and bring back a draft bylaw for your consideration at the November session of council. That will expedite the process as Councillor Nishikawa has suggested, and we can then move forward. I'm not fussed with the timeframes. I think that that's entirely achievable, and certainly I'm not fussed about our ability to get signs put in place if that's council's direction. The ground will still be relatively soft, so we can we can get the job done if that's what you wish to have happen.
Good. Thank you. So just to frame that up, we would be asking, and I'm seeing a general smiling and nodding of heads, that there is a consensus here that we would ask staff, Public Works, to bring back a report in the next session of council that would relate to parking, the parking issues in and around the parks and trails aspect. Sorry? In a more general nature, or, yeah, well, I would imagine there are a number of trouble areas, and to highlight those. I'm going to ask the mayor to comment, last comment.
Thank you. And I appreciate this can also separate out of parks and trails. We need to understand everything. I'll look to committee and look to you, Mr. Chair, for this. My own perspective is that we would be publishing a bylaw to regulate parking with theoretically 5 days notice to the general public to understand what is being contemplated. And I tend to be a firm believer that bylaws in particular, we just took a whole parks and trails bylaw and said it's going to come back to committee so the public have time to digest it and we all have time to digest it. We just magic wand say no parking on this end of the street may create some other problems and may not create some other problems, maybe unanimous consent and appropriately supported. I will say in particular, if we were going into the summertime and we had more traffic, yes, there's going to be people here for the next 30 days, but by November 15th, it's cold and snowy and miserable. Not as many people are going to be out walking the trails. And what we saw on Thanksgiving weekend will not be occurring on November 30th. So I'm a little reluctant to rush this to council at this particular point, understanding that again, it's a bylaw. And if we get it wrong, it takes 90 days to undo that mistake. So I leave that with you in your capable hands.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Any other comments? It would seem I did have a little bit of nodding of heads there as the mayor was speaking. So simply we would direct Public Works to come back to this committee in 30 days with that report in lieu of going right to council. It would come back here for discussion. And I'm sensing that is where we are with this. Can I sort of get a nodding of heads, for the thumbs up from the mayor, Councillor Roberts, Councillor Bridgman, Councillor Mazans going, should be sooner. Okay, so that's what I believe we have consensus. So that's what we'll do. So Director Becking, I believe you've got your walking papers on that particular issue, which is 5B. You good with that? Have you any questions or clarification? Good, thank you very much. Excellent. Okay, so I will then proceed to item 6B. Or do we want to have a break? Was there a timeout? Okay, good, very good. So it's 10:20 for 10:35. How about we get back together at 10:45? So 10 minutes? Good, thank you. See you soon. So my screen says live. We're live, but we're not recording. So it's not.
I hear your sweet voice.
He's gone.
No.
you can now unmute yourself earlier.
Okay, hello, everybody. Are we back? Are we good? Oh my gosh, America can stop doing that anytime. Councillor there, I see Councillor Jagowitz. Oh, there he is. He's on my screen. There he is. He's waving.
Okay, there he is, sorry.
Okay, good. Just a little housekeeping as we, oh, somebody else is on. Am I hearing an echo?
No, I think that was just.
Okay, good. Sorry. Just a little housekeeping on that last matter as it relates to that whole parking piece in the highway as it relates to, you'll be asked for comment. I would challenge everyone to certainly be very fulsome in their comments and it'll be considered. So there's your voice coming back to this committee next month. So please do that and stay focused on that task because we all know how important it is. So we are being heard. I'm going to move on now. I'm going to ask our corporate administrator Cheryl Hollows to speak to us about 6B, which is the support of the town of Amherstburg accessibility for Ontarians with a Disabilities Act website compliance extension request. Cheryl?
Thank you, Chair Zavitz, through you to Council. I'm just asking that you please give consideration to supporting this resolution from the town of Amherstburg. We were on track to satisfy a requirement of the AODA, the Accessibility Act, Disability for Ontarians, and that is in that we made our website compliant. It's a communication strand, and we made our website compliant. We started training with regards to updating documents, PDFs and such that are contained on that website. And unfortunately, the March declaration of the emergency required that we focus on other matters related to COVID. And so as a result, we have not been able to fulfill the requirement. And so if we can get an extension
There's a bit of an echo coming
from the
across,
province
Cheryl.
in this regard, it would be appreciated. Thank you.
Okay,
Cheryl,
good. I
there's a
see
bit of echo.
Councillor Nishikawa, you have your hand up.
Mostly I was going to ask if there could be some
Oh, please.
muting of other voices because I did not get that message. I certainly understand the message. Certainly we have had this discussion at our, just so if others are not aware, I actually represent the Township of Muskoka Lakes on our district accessibility committee. So I'm aware of this, but I mostly was just asking that we could, and it wasn't just Cheryl, it was previous times where we were hearing other voices on the call. So perhaps maybe it's the chair that could mute while others are speaking. Thank you.
Okay, is there any other comments on this resolution? Okay, good, thank you. And moved by Councillor Jagowitz, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Be it resolved that the General Finance Committee recommend to Township Council that the Township of Muskoka Lakes support the Town of Amherstburg Resolution number 202000914-281 in regard to seeking an extension from the province of Ontario of the compliance deadline for AODA website compliance stated in section 14 brackets 4 of 0.register 191-/11 to meet the compliance standards by a minimum of 1 year to at least January 1st, 2022. And further, that the province of Ontario consider providing funding, support, and training resources to meet these compliance needs or standards. So all those in favor, if I could. Okay, good. It's unanimous. Thank you. Committee. Okay, item 6C, again, this is a report from the clerk's assistant regarding a proposed license agreement, Westbury International Corp. Report, please.
Thank you, Chair. I hope everyone can hear me. A license agreement application was received from Westbury International, which is also known as the Port Carling Golf and Country Club. They're looking for a license agreement for a water line to be situated on an original road allowance. This encroachment does not exist yet. Currently, the golf course takes its water from a small lake within their property boundaries called Marion Lake. The Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry have advised them that they'll no longer be able to use this lake as a source of water. So the ministry has advised them that they would be able to take the water from Lake Rosso. So what they would like to do is would like to install a water line into Lake Rosso, which would have to cross an original road allowance. So the report outlines some of the provisions that staff are making. There will be the annual $600 fee for the first 5 years, and it'll be increased as per policy thereafter. Liability insurance will be required. It'll be for a term of 20 years. Senior staff have no objections. One provision that the Director of Public Works has recommended and staff is that the water line be buried beneath the ground rather than it be above ground. This would allow for it to not interfere with any future recreational use. There has been past discussions, very informal, but of the potential of that road allowance being used as part of an extension for paths for Huckleberry Rock. So putting it under the water would reduce the liability as well as not have it interfere with any of recreational use. So if staff has, or sorry, if committee has any questions, I can answer them for you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Terry. Councillor Edwards has a comment.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, it would be, I don't have a problem with that. I did see in the report if it was ever not used, it had to be dug up again. I would just leave it in there and cap it off if it had to be rather than digging it up again. And while they were doing it, it would be nice to extend the Hazelwood Trail and that down to the lake there. If the Trails Committee thought that would be good. It'd be another in that viewpoint, and maybe some of the licensing fees that we're getting could help put the trail in for that. Just a thought. Thank you.
Good thought. Mayor Harding.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Through you, probably to Director Becking on this, or even Director Pink in particular. I will state number one, extending the Hazelwood Trail down to the water, though there is a road allowance there. Obviously, there'd be two neighboring properties. And I think for the public to come down and sit around a 66-foot road allowance that beside someone's cottage or dock or whatever might be slightly problematic. The existing trail is there and loops back to Ferndale Road, so I don't think that presents any problem. The only question I do ask, and my question to Mr. Becking and Mr. Pink, I know there was some discussion with the Port Carling Muskoka Lakes Golf and Country Club to potentially utilize part of that unopened road allowance. And then I'm not sure whether or not they were planning on connecting, if they did utilize that road allowance, to connect to the, what I'll call the the western end of Ferndale Road, or were they going to just access the back of their property and come back in to their property? I'm not sure if either one of the directors has any information on that, because that potentially may have an impact when they bury a water line.
Director Becking.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In response to the mayor's question, I'm not aware of any intent on the part of the golf club other than accessing the portion that would be affected by the water main. Director Pink may be more aware of ongoing discussions than I.
David, is David available? He's on a call. Oh, there he is, David. David
I'm
Pink.
on a call shortly, so I apologize if I'm not available. I'm not aware of any further discussions from those of many years ago. I presume the golf club had abandoned those plans. I have not heard anything for quite a few years on that.
Okay, there's thumbs up from the mayor. Councillor Roberts, you had your hand up earlier.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I lowered it. Councillor Edwards brought up about the Hazelwood Trail and expanding it. And I just want to make sure that this waterworks was away from the Hazelwood Trail at this time, and it sounds like it is.
Good. Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, good. I've got a resolution here moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved that the General Finance Committee recommend to Township Council that the application for a license agreement to construct and maintain a water line on an original road allowance leading to Lake Rosso, lying between concessions 4 and 5, lot 26 and 27, Medora, submitted by Westbury International Corporation, Port Carling Golf and Country Club, Roll 4-9-001, be approved in accordance with Township Council Policy C-LS-07, subject to the following conditions. Should the provincial water taking permit not be approved, the resolution for approval of the license agreement application is deemed null and void. Number 2, the water line be situated beneath the surface of the road allowance, and any further studies needed as a result of this shall be submitted to the township for subsequent approval. And 3, a draft survey is prepared and provided to the township for review and approval prior to registration. Once the above conditions have been fulfilled, the bylaw shall be given 3 readings and passed at a future council meeting to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute any documents required for the license agreement. So all those in favor? Okay, everybody's got their, all those in favor? Okay. Cheryl, that's carried. That's good. Thank you. Thank you, committee. Okay, item 6D, again, Terry Guthrie, Clerk's Assistant, on the proposed license agreement JASSJ Muskoka Inc., Roll 4-19-026. Terry?
Thank you. Sorry about that on that last one.
Okay.
This is a license agreement application for a driveway. Currently, the applicant crosses over private property and has a deeded right-of-way to property, and he would like direct access. Fortunately, there's a road allowance that runs along the south end of the entrance of his property, and it meets up with Carlingford Road. So they've applied to put in a driveway to eliminate the need of the right-of-way. So there's no charge for road allowance or for driveways that would be situated on a road allowance. They'd be responsible for the liability insurance. It would be for 20 years, and proper environmental assessment reports and reviews will be required to be submitted to the Director of Public Works, as well as a survey will be required, and senior staff have no objections. So if you have any questions, I can answer them for you.
Good, thank you, Terry. Committee, any thoughts, comments? Okay, here we go. So I do have a resolution to read here, moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that the General Finance Committee recommend to Township Council that the application for a license agreement to construct and maintain a driveway on an original road allowance lying between concessions 12 and 13, lot 17, Medora, submitted by JASSJ Muskoka Inc., Roll 4-19-026, be approved in accordance with Township Council Policy C-LS-07, subject to the following conditions. 1, an environmental site inspection be prepared and submitted to the township, and all works identified in the assessment be completed to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works. 2, a draft survey is prepared and provided to the township for review prior to registration. And 3, that an entrance permit be obtained for access off Carlingford Road. Once the above conditions have been fulfilled, the bylaw shall be given 3 readings and passed at a future council meeting to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute any documents required for the license agreement. All those in favor? Good. Okay. Good, that's carried. Thank you very much. Terry, again, item 6E, inventory of municipal land and update of acquisition and disposition policies. We look forward to this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is for information purposes only. Staff has identified the need for a complete inventory of municipally owned properties, as well as an update to policies that relate to those types of lands, including acquisition, disposition, licensing, and the use of those lands. Like many municipalities across the province, we're in a position where we have a lot of costly infrastructure renewal and rehabilitation projects that are coming forward and need to be addressed. Lots of municipalities are looking at selling their surplus lands as a way to assist with revenue generation in order to alleviate the tax levy burden with respect to these infrastructure projects. The township owns over 300 parcels of land ranging from something small as a foot to a number of acres. And this inventory doesn't include road allowances, shore road allowances, or township roads. The township has a disposition policy, which provides for mostly an applicant-driven disposition of land. We have two policies which relate to the sale of original road allowance boat houses with the province. We have a license agreement policy for encroachments, and we have an acquisition of land policy by donation. So after reviewing all of these, we realized that we need to streamline a process, make something that's efficient, open and transparent and understandable by the public, because land sales and acquisitions are not necessarily straightforward and understandable. So we created some steps for this project. The first step is to complete a land inventory, which I have been doing. I have identified all the properties that are owned that have a municipal roll number attached to them. And right now what I'm doing is I'm reviewing each of the properties, looking to see what their legal description is, the frontage, the acreage, if there's other municipal properties in the area, zoning and access. So through this, I've actually most recently, and it's not included in the report, I've identified a number of parcels of land which have roll numbers affixed to them, which actually are part of road allowances, municipally year-round maintained roads. So something that we're looking at is doing a housekeeping bylaw shortly, which will designate these parts as part of the municipal road system, and then we can apply to MPAC to remove the roll number. So a housekeeping bylaw will be forthcoming to address these small remnants of land or parcels that were left off of original plans of subdivision. I've been working with the Director of Public Works to identify these. The next step would be to bring forward a new acquisition policy, which will include our existing land by donation. Followed by that, we anticipate bringing forward a draft or revision to a disposition of land policy to update the one that we have currently. Then we would be looking at drafting and updating our road allowance disposition policy. We do have some in place, which we use on a regular basis at this time, but there's lots of areas that could be improved in that policy. And then the last step would be to update our license agreement policy for encroachments, but at the same time include in that short-term licenses of use of municipal roads or just the general use. We have an old bylaw from the 80s and one from the early 90s stating what you can actually do on a road allowance or you can't do. You can't have a fire, different things like that. So, but those policies need updating. We also have to look at temporary use of road allowances or municipal roads. A number of our budding municipalities have policies in this regard. So if somebody needed to, let's say, for example, Hydro needed to access a property, they enter into an agreement, a temporary use agreement. Sometimes a retainer is taken, securities is taken to ensure the land is returned to its natural state after the use of the municipal land. So these are what's missing right now from what and what we don't have. So that would be the last step of the project. So if if you have any questions, I can answer them for you. That's just sort of a high-level overview of the project that I'm working on right now and what should be forthcoming.
Good. Thank you, Terry. Excellent report. Very worthwhile use of your time. Thank you so much. I wonder if I could ask a question, and that would be in terms of the timing, the runway for this piece. We're not talking impact to the 2021 budget. We talk. Sorry, I should ask that as a question instead of a statement. Is there a longer piece to that, or?
Well, so the first step is completing that inventory and recognizing if there are any properties that we could potentially dispose of quickly and easily. So that would come once I have the opportunity to identify and review each of the parcels. I'm about halfway through about the 300 of them. And so I have pulled a few aside, but it's not going to be this exact moment, and we need to put the policy in place so we have steps which will allow us to dispose of those lands. But it's definitely been recognized. If there are a few that we could address in the next budget, that would be wonderful, and hopefully we can move towards that. I have hopefully the housekeeping bylaw and the acquisition bylaw will be forthcoming at the next meeting, and then the disposition of land will follow that.
Good, thank you very much. Perhaps a supplementary, just to get some discussion going. Would this, were we to decide to sell some of these properties, would this be at a free market value, or would this be at a predetermined amount?
So that's what we're looking at when it comes to a policy to dispose of this land. At this time, we do look for an Ontario land appraiser to provide an appraisal of the lands. And so that would be something that would be taken into consideration. Our current policy, which we're looking at expanding, would allow us to determine what method of disposition we would use, whether it would be through a public tender, potentially putting out an RFP for real estate professional services, which could assist someone who could assist us with appraising the value of the land, as well as getting it listed and helping us through those processes. But that would still be forthcoming as to how we would dispose of land and include it in the policy.
Good, thank you. I'm not seeing any other comments. This is for information only, but it's a wonderful piece of insight and knowledge that we carry forward with you. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Councilor Mizan has a comment. Go ahead.
Quick comment, and thank you. It's through you. First of all, I think this is a great start, and it sounds to me, Terry, through your conversation, that you've already worked your way through half of it. Did you say?
Yeah.
So my question is really just about timing, managing expectation from council as to, when phase one is of your land inventory and evaluation.
Well, the inventory is a huge project. And so I'm trying to get myself through it as quickly as possible to identify those parcels. So I hope in the next month or so, I'll be able to complete the last of those properties, to at least do the initial review, see what's there. I am pretty familiar with them because I have actually been working on this project for a couple years, but it's one of those ones that's so huge, and I've made the time to actually physically do it, and it's something that is important to us to generate those revenues, so it's become a priority now. So I'm working as quickly as I can through the inventory, and then hopefully we'll be able to bring forward some policies in the next quarter or so.
Thank you, and sorry, I just want to comment that the work is evident, and that wasn't necessarily a push. It was more just trying to manage our expectations. So please, please make sure that's noted.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Terry. Great work.
Thanks.
Yes, no overtime. Thank you very much. Any other? Oh, sorry, Councilor Nishikawa has a question.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment that when we had gone through these lists over the years, we sure learned that many of them you can't do anything with. And I would even question some of the sales that we have seen over the years we probably shouldn't have given them building rights. Very challenging. But I did want to note that when this gets further in completion, that I'm hoping that our Attainable Housing Committee would have the opportunity to look for some options, that the land is actually considered. Perhaps maybe our municipality could take a role in saying the first thing we're going to look at are lots that we can make available to do our part when it comes to attainable housing.
Yeah, the CAO and myself have actually discussed this. So it's something that we will look at and is part of sort of the classification of the lands while I'm going through the inventory, trying to pull out ones that could potentially be done. Spoken with the Director Pink about how we tackle some of the properties that are buildable or not buildable. Some we have that are side by side, that if we merge them on title, then they would become a buildable lot. So different things like that. And so they would absolutely be considered and looked at for attainable housing, and look further into the process of how that is done, determining if is the municipality in the business of creating attainable housing, or is there another body or third party that it could work with. I know that the CAO has some past experience in that regard and has been giving me some guidance, and I have a lot more to learn about it.
Excellent. Councillor Hayes?
Yes, through you. Mr. Pink has brought this list forward to the Heritage and Attainable Housing Committee. So Terry, it is a huge job because we tried to look through it. So we look forward to a concatenated version to see what we could put into the attainable.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Okay, good. And I know that I see the CAO writing away here. So he certainly, this is a project near and dear to his heart. So he'll work with our group. So Terry, thank you very much for your presentation. I appreciate your time. I'm going to call item 6F is a report from our Director of Finance, Mark Donaldson, relating to Safe Restart Agreement funding. Mark?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, committee members. This too is an information item. So committee members are aware that the township received $616,000 earlier this month in phase 1 funding under the Safe Restart Agreement. These funds will be used to offset incremental operating costs and revenue deficiencies resulting from COVID-19. The province recently announced the process for a phase 2. Phase 2 is intended for municipalities who have exhausted their phase 1 allocation and are unable to mitigate further COVID costs from within. So staff have been tracking our COVID-19 impacts and are estimated which are estimated currently at approximately $250,000. A detailed update of the township's COVID status will be provided as part of the Q3 update, which will be received at the committee or presented to the committee in November. At this time, it's not expected the township will exceed the costs and revenue losses in excess of the phase 1 funding for 2020, which would make us ineligible for phase 2. So as such, we will not be making application for phase 2 funding under the program. Residual phase 1 funding or unused funding from 2020 will be carried forward by way of a reserve to 2021 to address any COVID-19 impacts next year that will be able to offset those items.
Has he gone?
No, that's if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Oh, okay, good. Thank you. Thank you for the report. I mean, I certainly have a question. I see that in your report in the background that the Safe Restart Agreement with the 444 municipalities was intended and is intended to protect the health and well-being of the people. Is that a very broad? That's a very broad interpretation. Are we as a township, are you as a management team having any challenges with staying inside that parameter?
Thank you for the question, Chair. So I think we are taking a very appropriate approach to tracking and identifying what we believe are impacts directly related to COVID-19, and those would be incremental costs that would not have been generally expected in other years related to cleaning of facilities or any items with respect to where we've had to alter services or shut down programs over the summer, as we're all aware. So I think that we are in a position where we are able to work within that very vague definition. The province has not provided us with a list of what is eligible or ineligible. I think they're looking more for just evidence that supports that these actions were resulting from COVID, and therefore these are the costs associated with that.
Good. Thank you very much. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. The cost that we're going to have as a result of COVID and opening up the arenas and opening up the community centers, are those costs applicable for this funding? And then I'll have a supplemental.
Thank you. So, Chair, to the committee member, to Councillor Roberts. So, I think incremental costs to those activities would be eligible for covered under the funding. So, I think the normal costs, I'll call them, with respect to operating the arenas would be probably not eligible. But again, we'll look at each item and just determine whether or not there is a case to be made that it should be part of this COVID-19 funding package.
Okay, on my supplemental, we're seeing pressures through emails for opening up the community center to more groups, which will result in more COVID-related expenses on cleaning and monitoring and stuff like that. When does the window close for this submitting anything new to this funding? Because maybe if it's soon, we should be trying to think about other possible things that we're going to be doing in 2021 to expand usage of our community center and the additional costs to keep you open them during a COVID time. So I guess to summarize, when is the deadline for adding new expense items, and can we do that for opening of our community centers and arenas further to the public?
Thank you, Chair, and through you for the question. So the program is eligible only for 2020 expenses. So we're not allowed to capture future expenses for 2021 under the application for phase 2. So it's very much confined to what costs are being incurred prior to December 31st, 2020. The only use we can have for funding is the residual funding for phase 1. That can be carried over to 2021 if we have any of the 616,000, whatever's left over, that could be carried over to 2021.
Good, thank you. Councillor Hayes, you have a comment?
Yes, through you to Mr. Donaldson. At the board meeting at the library yesterday, it was indicated that our self-generated revenue is almost nil, and it's not anticipated to grow at all because there has been no fundraising. There's been limited traffic going in, so donations are probably at the lowest that they've ever been. Given that this is a budgeted item and we won't be meeting this, is that a cost that we could pass along to the funding for COVID?
So thank you. So Chair, so through you to the question, I think that we would need to look closely at what the costs relate to. So I think with more information, we could certainly have a look at it. I think these are limited to township expenses and incurred by the municipality. So I just would want to kind of understand exactly how those costs would relate to the municipality, but it's certainly something that we could review in terms of making them eligible. Again, the province hasn't provided a list of what's eligible and ineligible. I think it's really about judgment. So I think we would need to look at that. We could look at that.
Okay, good. Thank you. And just a point of clarification, Mark, you mentioned in your discussion that staff are currently tracking costs related to COVID-19, and it's around $250,000. You haven't closed the book on 2020 per se. You're mentioning later that funding, phase 1 funding would go into reserves to be accessed, pressures to address pressures and costs expected in 2021. That's not to say that you've 250,000, that's what we're going to spend. And you haven't closed that door. That's open. We may spend more based on experiential to year end.
That is correct, Chair. So the amount is what we've spent to date at the time I was writing this report. And we certainly will continue to accumulate costs to December 31st before we make our final tabulation.
Good, thank you. Councillor Kelly has a comment.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to Mr. Donaldson. I just want to applaud your rather conservative approach to managing this funding. It is not, free money. It all has to be paid back somewhere by taxpayers or whatever. And I think taking a fairly pragmatic and fairly conservative approach to it as you are is spot on. So thank you.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Well said. Any other comments? If not, we'll move on, and thank Mark for your commentary. We look forward to seeing a lot and hearing from you a lot in the next months. Thank you very much. Okay, so the next item, 7A, which is the minutes of the the library board meeting held on August 11th. Councillor Hayes, you have any commentary on that? If you wanted to chime in, you certainly could. Otherwise, we'll accept those minutes into the record. Well, you good? Okay, good. Thank you. 7B. So I would call on Councillor Nishikawa, should that need arise, the August 20 Parks and Trails Advisory Committee meeting. Would you like to comment on that at all? If so, the floor would be yours. You okay? Are we okay? Are we live? Sorry, Councilor Nishikawa, were you able to hear me, Chair Nishikawa?
Yes, I didn't
okay.
have
So
any concerns. That's why I didn't put my hand up.
No comment. Good. Thank you very much. Item 8A, I'm going to be calling on Corey Moore, our Economic Development Specialist, regarding a street banner policy update report. So Corey, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Chair. Today's report provides a summary of the recommendations from the Grants and Economic Development Advisory Committee regarding the updates to the street banner policy and requests for additional locations in Windermere. Committee will recall that staff brought forward a request to add locations to the community of Windermere, and staff also took that as an opportunity to review the street banner policy to update and streamline processes and add a banner maintenance schedule to that as part of continuous improvement. Committee directed staff to receive further feedback from the Grants and Economic Development Committee, which staff did in September. The committee didn't have any issues with the additional banner locations or the updated street banner policy. It should be noted that as part of that report, Muskoka Chautauqua did acknowledge that and further communicated their understanding and willingness to ensure that community group banners are distributed evenly across the township. So that was important. The committee did have one addition that can be found in the resolution today as well, and that was regarding the banner template design. As per the policy, the township, the role of the township is to fill any unused banner locations across the banner areas. With the current change and addition of Windermere, we currently would have to budget for some additional banners as part of the 2021 budget to help fill some of those spaces. As such, the committee recognized that the banner template itself has been in existence since 2012 and recommended that it be an opportunity to review and update that design as well. So staff have included that in today's recommendation as part of council's consideration in the 2021 budget process. All the updates regarding the policy and the changes to the locations and purchasing of additional banners would be implemented for the spring 2021 installation date. With that, I can help answer any more questions or comments.
Good, thank you. I have a comment from Councillor Edwards. And then Councillor Nishikawa.
Yes, this relates to the Windermere, the 7 locations. Talking to some of the residents, they don't really want banners on all these here posts here. There's 8 posts between Gulf Avenue Road and the park. One is a hydro pole that's hidden by trees down by the lake. 2 are side by side, or is almost 3 feet apart. One is in front of a residential property. So that leaves about 4 going down by the, and that. And I know the historical board there, they would like to put some of the World War II and that banners for the legions up at some point, and they're talking about it. I think that they could maybe give 1 or even 2 at the most to Chocolate, but I've had people just complain about all the road signs there, and they just don't like them. So, you know, I think there's going to be pushback from the community if you start putting banners up all over the place.
Okay, Councillor Nishikawa, thank you for that.
Thank you. I have also heard that same comments, those same comments, and it's interesting because over the years, we have been considering Windermere as one of our historic gems communities. And in fact, not just the ACO, but our own Heritage Committee were considering a number of different issues, but it all related around heritage. And but now I'm hearing others that are saying, well, they don't even actually recognize who Chautauqua is, and not necessarily feeling the feel that these are folks, a couple of folks, I don't have the same number as Alan may have spoken to, that just feel that it's not the fit for their community. I wanted just to suggest or ask about Bala and or Port Carling. I thought that we were going to be starting some strategic planning, at least in Bala. And I would hope that these discussions, before we're going to start spending money on new fixtures or whatever we're looking at in the future, that it's actually part of that plan. Lots of changes are being thought about in Bala, and because they need to, and many will see that there's you know, some establishments for sale, for instance, that we need to consider that the impact on that community. So all I'm suggesting is that I would hope that this policy is going to be more part of the strategic plan for Bala. And also I support what Councillor Edwards is saying, is that I've heard from people that they're not quite happy to have a slew of banners through Windermere.
Good, thank you. Any other comments? I'm not seeing any hands, and certainly as I go through the report, of course, Economic Development Committee had a hand in this, of course, but I don't see where it actually the topic of actual locations or placement is within the report. I mean, it speaks in very general terms, but it doesn't isolate the 74 locations or 39 locations where it's a requisite, it must be there. So I'm wondering, Corey, have you had any, well, yeah, I see you have your hand up. Just, I'm wondering if you've had input from others besides the 2 that have spoken on that issue. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, staff did look at possible locations in the community of Windermere, and we included them in the report. And as further to Councillor Edwards' comments, we did highlight only 4 possible locations along Windermere Road between Gulf Avenue and the downtown park, or the Windermere Park. Additionally, there are 3 decorative light posts at the waterfront that could have support banners. So there was a total of 7 possible locations identified. Although use regarding the hydro poles would require further approvals by the township to implement.
Okay, so the comments have been noted. I have a resolution here that I would like to read. Moved by Councillor Roberts and seconded by Councillor Hayes. Be it resolved that the General and Finance Committee recommend to Township Council that the updated street banner policy attached as Appendix 1 to the report entitled Street Banner Policy Update and dated September 30, 2020 be approved. That the street banner template be redesigned and staff be authorized to consult with community groups to seek feedback on a new design. And 3, and that staff be directed to include for council's consideration requisite funds in the draft 2021 operating budget to enable the redesign of the street banner template and purchase of street banners. So all those in favor? So, oh, Ruth's up. Okay, good. So that's carried. Thank you, committee. Okay, sure. I'm going to call, so thank you, Corey. Good report. Appreciate your involvement there. The minutes of the August 26th, 2020 Economic Development and Grants Committee. Chair Kelly, you'd have the floor if you wanted it.
I'll just take 2 minutes. Ever since that David Sword guide was on, my broadband has really gone bad. So it's been intermittent, but 3 basic things to look at. We're kind of working with others, work with the chamber, and also with the David and his group through Corey. We're trying to find a way to help work on 3 parts for economic development, and this is sort of a here and now thing. This is really the reality of COVID. We're looking at shop local, making sure that there's a adequate amount of promotion and opportunity around for people to realize, people who are staying here longer perhaps than they used to realize they can still satisfy most of their needs, retailing needs locally. Number 2, we're looking to find ways to better exploit the assets in an off-season basis, and I'm talking about parks and trails. I'm talking about parking lots that are normally full of snow, plowing them, just to keep the opportunity available for people to enjoy themselves within the township in the off season, and hopefully while they're doing so, spend some money here. And the third issue really is more, to decorate and light certain areas to suit the mood and to keep people interested in staying here in the evening hours, hopefully with some consistent theme for decoration and lighting. It's not my department in the sense of I really don't know how to accomplish this, but we've got a lot of input and a lot of support on it, and we're hoping to make a positive impact that way as well. So the minutes pretty much speak for themselves, and I'll happily take any questions.
Good, thank you. I've also heard on your third point in terms of the ambiance piece, this fall, winter in terms of some lighting, but again, it's out of our, not exactly within our purview, but I do believe the comments have been heard. So thanks for making those yet again. Anyone else have a comment on that? No? Good. Okay, good. Thank you. We'll accept those into the record. Item 9, unfinished business. I don't believe there is any. If anyone has any unfinished business, please let us know. Now we're going to do new business. Councillor Roberts. Okay, good. Okay, good. So we're going to move on to 10. Item 10 on the agenda A, which is District Municipality of Muskoka updates. So I guess in no particular order, I'm happy to, Mayor, if you'd like to speak to that issue, please do.
Certainly, thank you. We had a meeting, October 1st special meeting, budget variance reports, nothing exciting to report. We talked about our vehicle activated traffic calming signals, which are the illuminated lights that tell you how fast you're coming into and out of, and we keep getting more and more recommendations. There is some concern that every single road is going to have some electronic speed sign on it. And is it very Muskoka or not very Muskoka? But what we've determined is some of the high key areas that remain need to be there will stay. Others that we will rotate these, what they call VATs, vehicle activated traffic calming signs, will rotate them around as needed throughout Muskoka. There was some consideration given for docking fees for sunset cruises, Port Carling locks. One of the boats last year, they lost their dock in the Muskoka River and they had to park in Port Carling. And we have recommended some lowering of fees versus our traditional fee bylaw to help offset some of their costs. We are recommending, by the way, that in Muskoka Lakes on the corner of Mortimer's Point Road and Foreman Road is it's a T intersection, but there's only a stop one way. Actually, I think it's two ways. There's a stop. You go through one way. Anyway, that is going to be a three-way stop going forward at Foreman Road and Mortimer's Point Road. We have approved a new diversion building at a Rosewarne transfer station and a few updates on new business, but nothing major. For those who are aware, we continue to update regarding the Port Samfield Bridge. And we have been able to avoid all night closures, all 24-hour closures, full road closures. We'll be starting, I think, this weekend, and there will be some night closures. And every week, as the schedule changes, there will be updates provided to the website and also to the sign at the end of Peninsula Road. But basically, during the week, it's 9 a.m. till I think 9 p.m. till 6 a.m. road closures, and on the weekends from 11 p.m. till 6 a.m. So that's my report.
Good, thank you. Do you have any sense, if I might ask you, Mayor, do you have any sense in terms of Highway 169 ballot at Torrance, is that going to be completed this year?
My belief is that they are doing, again, continuing to ditch and put in the new culverts accordingly from a final top sheet and new asphalt. I would believe that they're going to try and get it done this year, but I'd have to double check on that.
That's fine. Thank you. Okay, good. I'll call on. Thank you for that report. So Frank Jagowitz, if you would, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm reporting on the Finance and Corporate Services meeting of in September. Once again, it was quite routine. We looked at some user fees and reviewed our variance reports. I also didn't report on the August meeting, at the last meeting, and there we looked at our half-yearly report on interest earned on reserves, which was underperformed. The equity funds were minus 9%, but hopefully that will recover. I do also want to go back one more meeting to July, just to remind people, because this afternoon we're going to be considering our budget guidelines. And it was in July that we did them at the district. And some interesting facts out of there for the operating budget. Staff requested 4.1%. We approved 3%. Some interesting statistics that the Commissioner of Finance, now CAO, provided was that the CPI index was 1.5% and the construction index 2.1. I also attended a couple of other meetings, and possibly they'll be reported on by other people, but the Community and Planning Service Committee meeting dealt with the legacy proposal. I'll let the member report on that. And also I did attend the Health Services Committee, and it dealt with the paramedics regarding the bridge closure, and I'll let the other member report on that. That's my report. Thank you.
Good. Thank you for your representation at the district. Alan Edwards, please, sir.
Thank you very much, and that Chair Zavitz. We had an oral presentation on the climate action Muskoka. They want everybody to declare a climate emergency, and so that was discussed. The next was a presentation from Hutchison Environmental Sciences on the Penn Lake pilot station and that project, the final report. And let's see here. And of course, they did mention that there has been some, and that algae bloom in Peninsula Lake as well, in Lake of Bays. And then there was a Muskoka official plan amendment for Manette. And it was just saying that they had a working group and that on it. Just go right down to the last part of it. And it just said to be resolved that staff be directed to prepare an information report to the Muskoka District Council describing the benefits and risks of private communal servicing prior to proceeding with circulation of the official plan amendment. So basically that is it. They are looking into seeing if it's worthwhile putting in the private service, if it's safe enough. And if it isn't, then they'll have to put in a municipal service. And there was just some budget amendments to the seniors, and that which was $4,116 for seniors' mental health, and that was successful. And let's see what else we got here. And also there was some money for the homelessness, and that was $1,144,880. There was 20 units and that proposed. Most of them were in. There was one in Bracebridge and 19 in Gravenhurst, and that's my report.
Good, thank you very much. Very informative. I'll call on Councillor Ruth Nishikawa for her district report.
Thank you. Essentially, under health services, our number one issues we're dealing with are 2 long-term care homes. I call it 2 because, of course, we are still building, involved in the design and build of the long-term care home in Huntsville. As everyone's aware, the issues at the Pines and the outbreaks that have happened have created a lot of issues for staff, but I would say that that home is, feels to me it's the safest in the province at this point. I think that we should be very proud of the staff that run that particular facility, and they are doing their best to keep everyone safe. But we have had the outbreaks. Our paramedic services have presented a report and essentially of what their proposed service level changes will be coming forward for budget considerations. There would be an increase of about $450,000, which essentially the way some things work at the district through community services as well as healthcare is that we spend the money and then we ask for we basically show that it was a need or that we can get the money the next year around. So essentially that 450, even though we've heard lots of other funding, or the premier saying, go out and spend it and make sure everything is safe and good. But that wasn't the situation that was I understood at least, that we would not be able to get that money for at least another year. So it's interesting to follow, but I would also say that not to be concerned about that money, that it is a provincial bill, I guess. Lots of people think that we're paying, not we, as in, it feels like the Township of Muskoka Lakes is paying all this, but I'm saying generally paramedic services, some other services, and again, services through community service are funded by the province. And essentially, I think it's most important to know that our long-term care homes are taking up a lot of staff time and concern, and we should just support them as best we can. Thanks.
Good, thank you. Good reports all. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to move on item 10B, a community events update. I suspect this will be very brief. I don't know if anyone has, Councillor Mazan has her two fingers up. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. And this actually, I think, relates more to updates through the district. Recently, Councillor Edwards and I both attended the Muskoka Watershed Council meeting, as well as a working group, and there were some relevant pieces of information discussed. The first is that the Muskoka Watershed Council is currently going through a strategic plan review themselves. So they are embarking on that. And Alan, please chime in at any point if I missed something here. The second piece is they are currently looking at coming up with an official plan policy position statement from the Muskoka Watershed Council. As it is right now, individual members have been able to participate in our official plan process, but as a body, Muskoka Watershed Council is currently working on something. I think, and I don't think I'm misspeaking on this, Councillor Edwards, that they would welcome expertise or extra resources to help them in that, because it is a fairly cumbersome process. And just given the timing of our OP, it would be interesting to know if there's anybody out there that might be interested in participating. So that was coming out of that discussion. The other point that was discussed was the integrated watershed management plan. This is still with the provincial body. I will call it the Marty Witzel report. They have another name for this. So we hopefully look forward to that. But in the interim, there's this recognized need to start educating what does even an integrated watershed management plan mean and look like. So I think we will be looking forward to get some kind of education coming through the Muskoka Watershed Council. I know the chair of at the district, Nancy Alcock, was also expressing a lot of interest in something like that as well. So we may look forward to that. And they indicated, or there was discussion around the climate emergency discussion. And so whether or not they would put their name attached to that resolution. And I'm not sure where that landed, but I thought this group might be interested in knowing that there's lots of things happening in the background. So Councillor Edwards, I'm not sure if there's anything else that you would add to that or. No, okay, thanks.
Good, thank you. And, just maybe on that regard, I might be out of line. I wonder if I could ask the mayor if we have, and again, this may be completely out of sequence, and perhaps it's this afternoon at council. The question would be, do we have any sense of negotiations, discussions with the province as it relates to water, the amendment to the Muskoka River Watershed Management Plan? I mean, am I out of line? And perhaps I am. And I can ask that later unless the mayor would offer any comment.
No update at this particular time.
Good. Okay, fine. Thank you. Okay, good. So item 10C, I have a notice of motion moved by Councillor Hayes, seconded by Councillor Roberts, regarding the Walker's Point Community Library and the Milford Bay Community Library in the current budget year and the amounts fundraised in the prior year. So I have a motion. Is there any preface to, or perhaps I'd read the motion and then I could ask, would one of you like to introduce the motion before I read it? So Councillor Hayes, go ahead.
Yes, for a number of years since the community libraries have been working, whatever money they have fundraised during one year, they've approached council to match that funding as their budget for this year, for the current year. Last year, we did not give them the full matching amount. And what I'm requesting is, because there have been no opportunities to fundraise during 2020, if we could take that 2019 amount that was not matched and was not paid out and forward it to the 2020 for 2021 consideration in the budget, and also to increase that matching funding from where it currently is, and it's somewhere between 2,200 and 2,400 up to 3,000 as per Councillor Edwards' request. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And one more note, thank you to Cheryl for taking my notes and putting them in such a very professional way.
Good, thank you. Committee, any comments, thoughts? Okay, then I'll proceed to read this This motion moved by Councillor Hayes, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Whereas the Walker's Point Community Library and the Milford Bay Community Library annually request matching funding of donations raised by their respective community library in the current budget year in the amounts fundraised in the prior year. And whereas, given that in the 2020 township budget that matching funding was not met due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and whereas, given that donations are made with the understanding that matching funding from the township will occur subject to budget approval, and whereas limited or no opportunity for fundraising was available in 2020 for the community libraries, and whereas the community libraries will be incurring extra startup costs outside of ordinary costs to address COVID-19 requirements, i.e. protection barriers, sanitizers, masks, etc. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the General Finance Committee recommends to Township Council that any portion of the 2019 recorded fundraising amount not matched and paid in 2020 be carried forward to the 2020 fundraising totals for consideration in the 2021 budget. And further, that the maximum yearly allocation of matching funds raised be increased to $3,000 per community library, as suggested at the December 12th, 2019 General and Finance Committee meeting. Any comments? Good, I'll ask for a show of hands. All those in favor? Good, carried unanimously. Thank you, committee. Item 10D, I have a notice of motion moved by Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Edwards, to read the request from the town of Wasaga Beach regarding unauthorized car rallies. I have a motion here, but I'll certainly make the floor available to either of you, to Councillor Bridgman, Councillor Edwards, for comment. Councillor Bridgman has her hand up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd be very brief. If anybody's read this, the fines for this kind of behavior is so low, it's ridiculous. And so I just think we should support raising the fines for these kinds of car rallies that are not legal. I don't know if you have anything else to add, Councillor Edwards.
No, I would actually support that, and that because, you know, you never know, they might have something where they do mountain climbing on Huckleberry Rock when we've seen the trucks up there. So let's get something in place.
Good. It was hard to watch on the news when this event occurred. That when interviewed, one of the guys who was a passenger in one of these vehicles said that his friend had brought $2,000 in his pocket to the event just for fines. So talk about pre-planning. That's incredible. So listen. Oh, sorry, Councillor Ishikawa, please.
Thank you. I don't want to miss the opportunity that, in fact, whether it's 5 cars, 10 cars, and in fact, people in our township encouraging others to put all of the cars on our municipal wharfs. Pretty serious stuff, in my opinion, that in fact got very disrespectful comments on social media that why should we be concerned? Well, I think we should be concerned as a township. And if this is how residents feel that they can open up the township for whatever reason, for their own personal reason, to abuse some of our facilities in this way, we got to start putting some stops to it.
Good, thank you. I know what you're
and
speaking
those
of.
that don't know, this happened on the Torrance Wharf.
Yeah, it did, and certainly I have pictures of it on my Facebook. But certainly that group of people came in and left very quickly, but they were from, doesn't matter, you know, one of the red zones, and they weren't certainly from here. But they certainly identified that as a location where that would be an ideal photo op. So you're absolutely right with your commentary. I have a motion that I'll moved by Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Edwards, Be it resolved that the General Finance Committee recommend to Township Council that the Township of Muskoka Lakes support the provincial government in developing tougher laws regarding unauthorized car rallies as detailed in correspondence dated October 1, 2020 from the Mayor of Wasaga Beach to the Premier of Ontario. All those in favor? Good, thank you. That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Committee. And our last motion, notice of motion, moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Hayes, read the support of Municipality of Tweed resolution regarding medical cannabis licensing. Would one of you two like to speak to this? Councillor Nishikawa, Councillor Hayes? Okay, the report is what it is, so I see no. Councillor Nishikawa, sorry? No, I think we're good. Good, thank you. Okay, I'll read this motion. Be it resolved that the General Finance Committee recommend to Township Council that the Township of Muskoka Lakes support Resolution 343 passed by the Council of the Municipality of Tweed on August 25, 2020 with respect to medical cannabis licensing. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Committee. I think that's it. Adjournment. I don't believe there's any other matters of importance. We'll see you folks in an hour. Oh, sorry, Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. I have one new piece of business that I thought it was prudent that we bring it up right away. Given the overnight camping of a military style vehicle up in Huckleberry Rock and the annual and the destruction that is being caused by snowmobiles and by ATVs and by trucks of all types up on the Huckleberry Rock, I'd like to ask staff to come back to this committee with recommendations on how we can curtail specifically for Huckleberry Rock the abuse of destruction of our beautiful trail there. This includes the snowmobiles. We are a snowmobile park. Huckleberry Rock is. It is there is an approved snowmobile track number 35 that goes through Huckleberry Rock. I've spoke to Kevin Alexander and Brian Ovelson. Kevin's actually the president of the Muskoka Snowmobile Club, and he says they're losing many trails because of the abuse of a behavior of a few. So we need to do something to stop all the running around at the top of Huckleberry Rock with skidoos and all the running around with ATVs. And if we have to put up steel gates in certain places, then we need to do it. And I'd like staff to come back and tell us how we can secure Huckleberry Rock from this abusive behavior. So I'm just asking for a staff report to come back.
See, Mayor Harding's got his hand up. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I might have to declare a pecuniary interest in this, but regarding the snowmobiles on Huckleberry, the issue is, Councillor Roberts, there's actually no trail to the lookout, unfortunately. And just as people, when you go and walk to the lookout, there's not always a defined trail, and you may go a little to the left of this tree and a little right of that tree and a little left of the next. And unfortunately, that's what's going on with snowmobiles. So there's no issue in fencing off and cordoning off a trail out to the lookout, but unfortunately, there is no trail to the lookout during the wintertime.
Supplemental. Then we should be discussing that with the Snowmobile Club. They have a groomer in there at 3 o'clock in the morning to groom the trail. If this is what the people would like to see, then maybe we should. But the photographs I sent out last night, they're running over trees, they're running up rocks. The famous Outlook Rock, you can see scratches. I have pictures of scratches from skidoo. So what I'm saying is, I don't want to stop snowmobile activity. I just want it well managed, and I think we should be getting the OPP in there for more enforcement of going off because the terrain up there just can't take it.
Okay, Councilor Nishikawa has a comment.
Thank you, and I am very aware of the time. I'm really concerned that people consider that hiking, foot traffic, and motorized vehicles do not belong together. So we would not be considering a large amount. For instance, we needed to open up the parking for Huckleberry earlier this year because of COVID. But in doing that, we didn't consider that the other users. And so historically, there's been the foot traffic that stops in the fall. Snow comes, the other users do. We don't mix the two. Now we're mixing the two. And I would just be very cautious, council, that when you mix the two, there's a lot of concern to be had. And I would even suggest this year that you might want to restrict ATVs while you have foot traffic on that hill. You got to start getting rid of the motorized vehicles at this point. And if the intention is that trail is going to be used and left open for foot traffic, I think you need to get your legal opinion on liability when you're encouraging snowmobiling, ATVs, and foot traffic.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, good. So, I mean, good discussion. And just before I'll ask you, Gord, to come on one more time. Just as I would have thought that we did issue the challenge to, and Director Becking is, well versed in this. I do believe he's coming back with a report. I do believe he's also going to ask for all of this committee's opinions based on some questions that he's going to ask, and certainly some comments and observations we would have. So I would suggest that we've covered it off, certainly not trying to defer this or put it off. It's clearly urgent and it's clearly important, and it's very, very necessary. And it relates to use of ATVs, motorized vehicles on trails as well. So I think it's all part of that piece. Are we in a comfortable place with that committee right now, given that it is with Public Works, and Public Works will be driving this point forward and keeping this on the front burner for us? Okay, good. I see the Gord does
And I will have just a final comment. I'm comfortable with, in respect, Director Becking will do a great job in taking care of this. It's more in timing. We need to get snow will be on the ground January for skidoos. So and snowmobilers will be using that trail before the Snowmobile Club opens it up. So I hope it's a very timely report that is coming back from the Public Works. That's all I'll say.
Okay, thank you. And I'm not sure if if you want Director Becking to come back on and provide that assurance. I sensed it was in a timely fashion, and I sensed it was, I don't know, put words in his mouth, within the next 30 days. So I think we'll be tasked with the opportunity to provide input very quickly, and I hope one and all do. And it'll shape that framework going forward. Is that where we are? Okay? Okay, good. I'm seeing that. Okay, good. So I'm going to read this final resolution moved by Councillor Edwards and seconded by Councillor Jaglowitz, that at 12:05 be it resolved that this meeting adjourned at 12:05 p.m. And the next regular meeting of the General Finance Committee will be held on November 11th, 2020 at 9 a.m. or at the call of the chair electronically from the Council Chambers Municipal Office in Port Carling, Ontario. All those in favor? November 11th. We'll see you then.